Today, January 23rd, is the Republican primary in New Hampshire, and the race is just down to Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. And yet, despite seemingly having this in the bag, Trump's stress seems out of control because that acute cognitive decline that we've seen him experience over the past several months has gotten more frequent and more embarrassing, to the extent that even Nikki Haley, who otherwise tends to not talk about these things, is publicly hammering him for a recent gaffe. And you won't believe the extent to which Fox News, Newsmax, and MAGA Republicans are trying to cover for Trump. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert buttons before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at, but just to set the stage, why am I talking about this? Well, if you follow the channel at all, I believe in destroying the asymmetry of expectations. I don't believe that Democrats and Republicans should play the game of politics by disparate rules. And since Republicans have made a campaign point to talk about President Biden's mental fitness, I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and we should be able to talk about Donald Trump's mental fitness. And so with that in mind, this is a highly publicized recent gaffe of Trump in which he confuses two very different people.
By the way, they never report the crowd on January 6th. You know, Nikki Haley, you know, did you know they destroyed all of the information, all of the evidence, everything, deleted and destroyed all of it, because of lots of things. Like Nikki Haley is in charge of security. We offered her 10,000 people, soldiers, National Guard, so whatever they want. They turned it down. They don't want to talk about that. These are vetted.
So again, this was all over the news for the past 72 hours. And if not for the fact that, again, MAGA Republicans and Fox News and Newsmax is bending over backwards to try to cope for Trump or to cover for Trump, I might not even be talking about it. But again, just to provide you context, this is how Nikki Haley, who has otherwise been very deferential to Trump, like going out of her way to avoid criticizing him as much as possible, this is what she had to say about it.
Last night, Trump is at a rally, and he's going on and on mentioning me multiple times as to why I didn't take security during the Capitol riots. Why I didn't handle January 6th better. I wasn't even in D.C. on January 6th. I wasn't in office then. They're saying he got confused, that he was talking about something else. He was talking about Nancy Pelosi. He mentioned me multiple times in that scenario. The concern I have is I'm not saying anything derogatory, but when you're dealing with the pressures of a presidency, we can't have someone else that we question whether they're mentally fit to do this.
And again, listen, from a Republican perspective, I think that's fair to make that criticism against Trump, particularly since he's been trying to make it against President Biden. But yes, Donald Trump was attempting to refer to Nancy Pelosi, spreading the conspiracy theory that then Speaker Nancy Pelosi somehow refused his assistance to provide extra security for the Capitol. Number one, there's no evidence that he ever made the formal offer. And number two, Nancy Pelosi was not responsible for security at the Capitol, right? At the end of the day, it was Donald Trump as the sitting president who had the authority to deploy the National Guard prior to the riot and certainly during the riot. He chose not to, but he's, of course, trying to blame Democrats and Nancy Pelosi. So in response to all this, MAGA Republicans, Fox News, Newsmax, you're just skittering out of the woodwork to try to cope and compensate for this obvious, grotesque gaffe that had Biden made, they would be talking about nonstop. Listen to Elise Stefanik, the number 4 in command of the House Republican Conference and a potential vice presidential pick for Trump. Listen to her desperately try to spin this.
That isn't a mix-up. The reality is Nikki Haley.
She wasn't Speaker.
Nikki Haley is relying on Democrats, just like Nancy Pelosi, to try to have a desperate showing in New Hampshire.
But he was talking about January 6th.
President Trump has not lost a step. He is a stronger candidate, stronger than he is today, than he was in 2016 and he was in 2020. Compare that to Joe Biden's weakness.
That's embarrassing. That is truly profoundly pathetic, a level of spin I don't think I've ever seen from Democrats. Not at that level, not at that just unblinking, cultishly devoted. She delivers it with such conviction. I'm almost tempted to believe she thinks it herself, right? But according to people like Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, Elise Stefanik used to be sane, so it's probably just performative. She's just an unprincipled loser whom we should relentlessly mock, not an actual cultist. Now, this next exchange is on the Fox Propaganda Network, and what's interesting is you have one person who says, yeah, this is a really disturbing thing that Trump did and suggests that he's in cognitive decline. And then you have another person who is supposed to be reasonable, right? And one is an elected Republican and the other one is a straight Fox News anchor. See if you can pick the difference.
You know, he got her confused yesterday with Nancy Pelosi on the January 6th with the National Guard. And I would say 25 years ago, he wouldn't have made that mistake. But he kept saying Nikki Haley did this, you know, with the National Guard. He was talking about Nancy Pelosi. And that's another example of you know, he wouldn't have made that mistake if he was younger. But I just...
Congressman, let me ask you before you go, why are you one of the only elected officials in South Carolina?
So Shannon Bream, an alleged straight Fox News journalist who's not an opinion journalist or a commentator, she's the person who took over from Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday. She just changes the subject. She doesn't actually follow up or anything. She just quickly changes the subject. Ralph Norman, the elected Republican congressman here, who, by the way, backed Trump's attempts to steal the election. He was the one who said in a text message, declare martial law, and misspelled Marshall like we are Marshall or the store, right? And even he's saying, yeah, Trump is in serious cognitive decline here. And a straight Fox News journalist can't handle it. And so she rapidly changes the subject. It's not just her, though. You have Harris Faulkner on the Fox Propaganda Network sparring with Nikki Haley supporter Chris Sununu, who, as we've discussed in previous videos, says he'll still back Trump in the event that he defeats Haley, right? So these are two to varying degrees Trump supporters, right? And listen to how, in her own roundabout way, Harris Faulkner tries to provide cover for Trump.
On Haley continuing to bring up Trump's age, here's what he had to say.
I think I'm a lot sharper than her. I would do this. I would sit down right now and take an aptitude test, and it would be my result against her result, and she's not going to win. She's not going to even come close to winning.
Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, this is the guy. This is the guy that was blaming Nikki Haley for January 6th and couldn't. If he's off the teleprompter, this is not Donald Trump of 2016, guys.
So,
if he's off the teleprompter, he can barely keep a cogent thought. I mean, that's just fact.
But you've seen him in person probably more times.
I've worked with him very closely. He's not the same guy. This is not Donald Trump.
He didn't have a prompter last night.
Yeah, look, this guy is nearly 80 years old. Thank you for your
77.
service. Yeah, that's nearly 80. We'll do math later, but look, this is not 2016 anymore. He's not on his fast.
Do you hear how Harris Faulkner is trying to cover for him in a way that she would never do if they were talking about Biden? When Sununu says he's nearly 80. No, he's 77. Yeah, that by any reasonable definition, that's quite close to 80. And then, of course, to hear Trump talk about, how I would totally take a cognitive test. I challenge her to do it, too. She wouldn't even come close. I would beat her. I would beat her so bad. I would double beat her. Pathetic. Just a profoundly pathetic man. But it gets so much worse. It gets so much worse. I'm going to play you two clips from this guy at Newsmax. Okay, you think the previous two, you think Elise Stefanik, the MAGA Republican, you think she was bad? Listen to this guy. Two clips.
All right, you're about to see the fake news version of the worst flub in the world. Now, they know it's not the worst flub, it's not the worst gaffe, but they say Trump made it, so it must be really, really bad. I don't think it is that bad, and actually might even be great, as in it's not a gaffe, might have been exactly what he wanted to say when he seemed to say Nikki Haley when he meant Nancy Pelosi. Take a look.
Well, okay, 4D chess master Trump. I mean, I was waiting for somebody to dust that old meme off. So he plays the clip, and this is how he copes with it.
But let's look at the names for a second. Nancy Pelosi and Nikki Haley. All right, they both start with N's. They both end in vowels, both the first name and the last name. The names arguably are rather similar, okay? But I think he actually meant to say Nikki Haley. He said it on purpose, and the fake news fell for it.
It's a cult. It really is a cult. It's such a cult. It's so obviously a cult. That's pathetic. That everyone associated with that guy should just stop associating with him. Like, I'd be embarrassed if I had a friend do something like I'd probably stop being that person's friend, because I'm like, you're dangerous. Like, you've got clear issues yourself. I mean, just the sheer cope coming from that's worse than Elise Stefanik, and that's saying something. But occasionally you have moments of, clarity. You have, I think her name is Marie Harf here. She is an occasional, basically I consider her the blonde Jessica Tarlov, in the sense that when she's on, she actually makes really good points. She and Jessica Tarlov, I don't know, they need their own damn show on Fox. Of course, nobody on Fox would, be happy with that, because it's two sane people spreading sane things. But this is what Marie Harf has to say.
And you're seeing Donald Trump increasingly get confused on the campaign trail. He thought Nikki Haley was Nancy Pelosi. That clip is brutal.
I can't believe they let her say that on the Fox Propaganda Network. There was like a cane that kind of came out of nowhere and tried to yank her off stage. This is a former Deputy Press Secretary Matthews for Donald Trump. This is what she had to say about Trump's gaffe.
He's definitely no spring chicken. And so I think it's fair to question his mental acuity in when you have these kinds of moments like this, where he definitely seemed very confused.
Especially if you're going to hold the President Biden, to that standard, which, fine, if that's your standard, so be it. But again, you should hold everyone to that standard. And Trump violates that standard as much as anybody. This is the Biden-Harris HQ Twitter. They're quoting him because he said at a recent rally, "We are an institute in a powerful death penalty." And the caption is, yeah, we don't understand what he's saying either. The last clip I want to play is actually on that note, which is Joe Scarborough, a lifelong Republican, a guy who served as a Republican, I believe, in the House of Representatives under President Clinton. This is what he had to say about the fact that the Biden-Harris campaign is hitting Trump mercilessly on these gaffes. This is good news as far as Joe Scarborough is concerned, and I agree, but here's his take.
The Biden campaign, which is supposed to be, out of touch, the old man doesn't know what he's doing, they've seized the zeitgeist. They understand. They understand now, and they're turning it out quickly, that Donald Trump says something stupid, it's up online like 15 seconds later. It's on TikTok, it's on YouTube, it's on X, it's on Instagram Reels. I mean, we've been seeing this over the last week, just how quickly they're moving on Trump. And I gotta say, I think this is why Trump got away with this in the past, because all of his opponents were flat-footed. And maybe even the Biden campaign in 2020 didn't have to do this as much as they're doing in 2024. But there, you can sense, is a real understanding. Donald Trump loses his mind, forgets what he's saying, confuses Barack Obama with Joe Biden, confuses World War II with whatever the hell he was confusing, confuses Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi. The whole world's going to see in 3 seconds, and they're going to see in 3 seconds because they're on him now. You talk about a tight man-to-man defense. You cover the White House. What's happening?
I agree, and I think it's good. Listen, I wish we lived in a world in which we didn't have to be so petty in our politics again. I love the West Wing. I wish that was the reality in which we lived in terms of how we litigated our political disagreements. The West Wing is not reality. It's not the real world. And as long as Donald Trump and the spirit of Trumpism and MAGA animates the Republican Party, it could never possibly be how politics are run. And that means that when and where appropriate, Democrats, the left, liberals, progressives, we must be ruthless and relentless in our politics. And I love the fact that we're starting to do that with Trump's gaffes. And hopefully it will make a sizable difference in public perception by the time of the election. Let me know what you think in the comments.